All right, what's up, friends? It's Trev here. I'm Cursebitten. I make a lot of cool music. Um, I just had a wonderful stream talking about the kind of the production and the songwriting process behind "To Stare Down the Heavens," which is my latest single. And yeah, I didn't really have anything like set up to save it, but I feel like it was super good, super valuable. So I don't know. I'm just gonna give it another quick rundown and maybe put this on YouTube and show people what's going through my head when I write a song. So last time I started out by running through the song. I guess if this isn't live, you could just check it out. Maybe check it out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp, wherever you want. Give the song a good listen through. And yeah, and then we'll just start out here. So I think that the logical first place to start is we've got this creepy, nice low synth here. Right, so that's using this thing called Digits by Extent of the Jam. It's a pretty cool synth. I'm using a preset on it. I'm not a huge synth guy. I don't know a ton about synthesis, so I like to use presets and then just kind of tweak them from there. I think on Cursebitten a couple weeks ago, I was talking to Rog, and they kind of said the same thing. They like starting with the preset instead of starting with like just like the raw sound and working with the waveforms there. So I've got this Digits thing set up. I've got it pretty low and a nice envelope. You can hear it expanding, adding a lot of high end as it goes out. And since it's so big and it takes up so much space in the mix, since it takes up so much space, I'm just doing single notes there. It would sound pretty clustered, pretty, I don't know, not ideal if I were using anything else. And kind of interestingly for this song, not super interesting for the genre, but something to point out nonetheless. I don't have like a handful of repeating chord progressions. It's really just this one backing part with different ideas over it. So if you solo it out, you'll see it's pretty much cooking the same the whole time. A couple points I may tweak it, change it here and there, but it's mostly this. So one more thing with this bass thing before I kind of move on. You'll see up here, you can see in the MIDI, I cut this note short, and this is what it sounds like. All right, and then in the context of the mix, this is what we're working with. So see that big, things kind of fill out from there. We get that lead melody going. That's a little dynamic trick. So with writing songs, you want your dynamics to be interesting and you want things to sound big when there's big impactful moments. And kind of like the obvious knee-jerk reaction way to do that is you want it to sound big, you're going to make it bigger. You're going to make it louder, make it take up more space. That's good. But, you can kind of get into some trouble there. You don't want to just, ramp it up every time, up and up. It's not going to sound good. You're going to hit the ceiling. So a better idea in a lot of cases is to turn things down right before you hit the big part. So then, through contrast, it's going to sound a lot bigger. So in a normal spot, that note just fills out and leads into it. But then here drops off. And that's felt just a little more. And it's not too harsh. If it were harsher, it maybe, borderline corny there. I feel like, that's a good spot to have it in. One more thing about kind of the intro for this. I start out with this fire sample here. And we'll solo that out and see what that sounds like. A lot of people say it's the beginning of the song starts with like a nice cassette feel or like an old worn vinyl or something. This is actually like a field recording of a fire from this Spitfire Labs package, Tundra Atmosphere, which is super cool. One thing to point out for my music, I use Spitfire Labs all the time. They're free and they're just so good. It's very preset heavy, and there's some negatives like very baked in reverb, but overall, like the range of sounds and the range of good sounds that it has is just hard to beat. You get a lot of weird stuff like this Tundra Atmosphere here, all sorts of weird, I don't know, a lot of times just ways to take up space in the mix, some kind of ambient stuff, or like I mentioned, field recording stuff like that. So yeah, I include it there to just add some flavor as it starts. And I don't run it through the whole song. I feel like it wouldn't be so good to take up that much space by like running it. I don't know, it becomes unnecessary. Right now there's not a lead going on, there's a lot of space to be filled, so it's fine to have that. And here, I'm in Reaper, by the way. I'm hitting V here. It's the shortcut to have this envelope for volume. When you're working with MIDI, you can't just, let's check it out for this. So here, I don't want it to just die. I want it to fade down. So it's like a long fade from this point to this point, and then a more abrupt one at the end. With True Audio, you could, fade out like that. It's not the case with MIDI, so I'm using my volume here. But yeah, so that's the little trick there. Just adding a little bit of identity. I think it sounds really nice in this more spacious spot at the beginning. So next thing to look at is the cymbal sound. I think that it's so cool. There's two cymbals kind of adding percussion. One thing that's maybe notable, this song only has 10 true tracks. This is a click that I used when I was writing it, but just 10 tracks, so there's not a ton going on as far as like a bunch of instruments jammed in there. That's something that I've noticed as I'm getting better with writing music with computers. I'm using fewer instruments. So yeah, here only 2 tracks for kind of percussive elements. But yeah, it's called Symbolistic. It's a very cool free cymbal VST. Got all sorts of types of cymbals, as well as different ways to hit things there. So this is what I'm using. It's mallets on a 21-inch ride. You can see here there's 2 velocity layers. Velocity is like how hard you're hitting the keys. With MIDI, because it's not true audio, it doesn't have like perfect dynamic response depending on how hard you hit things. So things will have velocity layers, so different cutoff points for doing different sounds for like a lighter attack versus a heavier attack. This one has 2. This is the lighter. The heavier is a little more clattery, and here I just wanted something sitting back, taking up space, adding in this layer of ambiance. I think it accomplishes that really well. It's really reverbed out. Here, normally you would have some sort of like spacious hit on the 2 and the 4. I'm just putting it on the 2, giving a bit of that feeling that would provide, but letting it ring out. I don't know, I just thought that it would sound nice that way. I don't know if I could have like a prescription for when to do that, but yeah, all together in the mix here, you're getting that. And to be honest, when I was writing this, when I heard this sound, I really wanted to use it. I was thinking of fighting the dancer in Dark Souls 3 and how like her footsteps have all this reverb attached to it, and you can kind of hear that in the mix of the song. It adds such a layer of dread, and that's what came to mind when I heard this. It was super inspirational. But yeah, that's like the more color on the cymbal. Then I've got this other cymbal just on the 1. That's just to, just to kind of fill things out. See, just something kind of light, kind of simple. Yeah, and you can especially feel that when we have the big dip there. It's just a little something to add a layer of percussion to it, and to kind of emphasize the downbeat, like emphasize the 1, I guess. Yeah, as far as the intro goes, there's maybe one more thing I want to talk about, and then we'll move on. And that's this swell here. I use swells all the time in my writing. I feel like they're such a nice way to like change things, add a bit of a different feel to the overall mix without like committing to another melodic idea that would end up coloring the identity of the song. This is really, it's felt more than it's heard. And that's something that I'm going to say a lot. I like that description, but it's really true. It's just kind of buzzing in and out. In the context of the mix, as I wanted it to build, like, so this is 12 seconds in. I wanted something to change at this 12-second point, after a few measures. But I don't want to just dive in with a melody yet. I want like a little more of a little more offered at the beginning, just kind of taking the backseat before things get too melodic. So I had the swell. See here, it's a little more empty. In this, we start taking up space. So now the mix has changed. Now if you think of like, let's see if I have EQ on this guy. I actually don't, which is funny. I tend to EQ most things. But yeah, if you think about like an EQ spectrum like this, you want all these, like you want things to be realized in where this swell is not really being represented in the mix without it. It's just like prime real estate for occupying. The swell's not getting in the way of anything. It's just fleshing things out, adding a layer of dynamics, adding a bit of feel. So yeah, that's the intro. So then here I'm using the extent of the jam digits again for this first melody. First thing that you may notice, a lot less attack there. It's not something more like staccato. Like if I were to, you hear that, right away you're getting the sound. Yeah, something like that. It's nice. It's nice to kind of blend in, especially with this genre. It eases into it. It's you sacrifice a bit of the rhythmic identity, I think. But you gain a nice textural thing. And this also has a bunch of filters on it. It has like a little bit of delay, and I think that the delay is changing pitch, and maybe the original note is also changing pitch. It's giving you this cool thing. Yeah. One thing to note, you have to be very careful. So this has a lot of sustain on it. So like, let's see. So I take my finger off there, and there's still sound coming on, I go back and change the MIDI. I'm a big fan of going back and reprogramming MIDI, changing things by hand. For me, like, my identity isn't as a keyboardist, it's as a musician and a songwriter. If my music were, hey, look how good I am at keys, then I would understand not wanting to do that. But I'm always quantizing, I'm always moving MIDI around. Sometimes I just straight up program the MIDI, I don't even use the keyboard. But yeah, so just little stuff like here. If I were to fill out the note all the way to the end of the measure, it's a bit muddy, right? They blend through a little too much. Whereas a little breathing room there. It's just right. Maybe a little more here. I appreciate that in a mix. You don't want to step on toes, and especially with the low attack, you want to make like the rhythmic sound of the note coming in. It's important to make that clear, I think, unless you're intentionally running things together, but that wasn't what I was looking for here. So that's that melody. I feel like at this point we've already hit half the tracks with it having so few. one idea here. So you want things to change in songs, especially stuff that's like, in a very, very broad sense of the term, something that would fall under pop music, something that's like written to keep your attention. So I feel comfortable saying that this falls into that, something with like a repeating structure and a lead melody. And I didn't want to change the melody, which oftentimes, like if you do say a verse and then verse 2, you want to change the lead melody a little bit. But I like this layer of repetition. I think that with this like kind of creeping dread that the song had, I don't know, it's nice to have that repetition. I think it adds to it, but you don't want it to get stale. You don't want to just repeat the same thing multiple times. And I think that's a lot of newer musicians fall into that pitfall, especially with this genre maybe. So I ended up adding a counter melody to capture like some textures that weren't really being represented, capture some sonic space in the mix that wasn't being represented, and capture some rhythmic areas, which is really important with counter melodies. You don't want it to step on the lead melody's toes. You want things to kind of fold together, like a zipper almost. So check this out. This is generally how counter melodies will go in this song. See, it's note and then 2 notes. New note, not really stepping on the toes. It's very important to write that way. Again, unless you have an intentional choice not to. But in general, counter melodies sound best when they're in every aspect of sound, taking up space that the lead melody isn't, then providing something nice to the ear. So then at this point, it'd probably make more sense to put this here. This Peel, oh, by the way, this is this Peel guitar. That's another Spitfire Labs. It's super cool. Just a nice guitar. There's a nice level of like, it's a little driven. See, it's a little crisp, and like if you crank it, there's a little more at the higher velocities. And not super clean, there's a bit of grit there. And then it has this lo-fi delay from JS, which is awesome. You'll notice my EQ and my delay. These are both the RIA and then the JS suites. They just come with Reaper and they're awesome. JS has so many cool like delays and compressors and things like that totally just come with the software. I use them all the time. It's really nice. This lo-fi one helps it like, see, the repeats are a little grittier than the original. It helps it just get soupy, blend together in the mix. It makes the delays be a little more atmospheric, which I like. But yeah, so at this point, the Peel guitar takes over the melody, but it does it in a way that's kind of interesting to the ear, where it keeps the same first 2 notes, but then, see, then it plays off it and develops its own lead line. And really importantly, this guy's still going on here. It doesn't, just because I'm done with this instrument, it doesn't just cut out. That wouldn't sound too good, so imagine this. All of a sudden it's a dramatic loss of space in a way that doesn't feel very dynamically sound. By adding that and just having it creep off, it stops taking up melodic space and just kind of sinks into the background. Listen to that. It's kind of like I was saying, it's felt more than heard. It's just taking up space in the mix. It's making things feel full and saturated. It's nice, and as it creeps off, it's not sudden. Now there's space in the mix, and it feels very natural for it to be spaced out. And then as we get into more atmospheric builds later on, the contrast is there, but it wasn't so abrupt that the song loses anything. And I will talk about this melody a little bit because I like it. It's nice for melodies to kind of peak like dynamically and melodically, to have them get high up and then drop down, or just like build to something high the same way that you would build to something loud. I think that just the way that these notes roll off each other, it's so nice. And the way it doesn't resolve. That brown, that goes down, I think, to like a major seventh. It's very nice. I don't know. I just think that it's good. It adds a lot to it. And then, so at this point, I'll kind of go back to what I was thinking songwriting wise. So at this point, we've had this lead melody, and then we introduced a counter melody. And then in the next portion, the counter melody became the lead melody. And I kind of like that idea, and I wanted to continue with that as a motif. This idea of like motifs don't have to be melodic, they can be conceptual. Can be like texture, can be a motif, is something that a friend's told me. The way that this like things are rolling through is kind of its own motif. It's something comes in as a counter melody, it's kind of in the back of your head, and all of a sudden it's more developed and it's in the forefront. And that's what happened with that Peel guitar. So then we do that again with this opia. And note again, the opia is coming in when nothing is coming in on the Peel guitar. You know, they're generally not hitting a note at the same time, and that allows, not only sonically is the opia taking up space the Peel guitar is in, that opia is like rhythmically coming in, hitting things that weren't getting hit, and it's fleshing things out without stepping on the toes of the Peel guitar's part, which is the lead melody. You don't want them fighting. You want them, like I said, working in harmony, kind of peeling together like a zipper. Yeah, and I'll talk about this whale thing in a moment, but we'll get through the melody first. So this opia. Opia is super cool, by the way. It's like a weird synth suite from Labs with a ton of stuff that you can do. Some of it ambient, some not so much, some just super bonkers weird. All these like tape warps have multiple notes tied to each key. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. And it takes up space in a weird way. I feel like it's just a texture that isn't used very much. So yeah, so here we have again the counter melody. Here later on becomes the lead melody, and then we don't have a counter melody. I'll talk about that in a second. So first off, as this takes the lead, it goes up. A lot of times, like going to a higher octave is a nice way to add energy and add like a contrasting idea, kind of like getting louder. I kind of got into that talking about the Peel guitar, but I think it's important for this, since there's not a counter melody, to build up in a different way. And with the way this takes up space in the mix, I like that it's brief notes with a lot of holes. It's not being held out. It's very staccato. It's very this is low attack, kind of contrasting with that very first digit melody. And this is all just like minor pentatonic stuff. Like note-wise, it's fairly simple. Just kind of working along the bass line and then following my ear. So one thing that allows so much space with these staccato notes, and then thing is really cooking that whale song. Yeah, something that adds so much space with the staccato notes, and then something that allows me to not have the counter melody is with how big the mix gets. With these swells and with this atmospheric sound. So this swell is actually the same one from earlier. Taking an idea from earlier and putting it later in a slightly different context, that's just a nice way to like maintain this level of consistency and identity in a song. So this keeps that, and again, this is like, you hear what that's taking up. That's not found in other parts of the mix. So it's really just like hitting your ears in a satisfying way while minding its own business in the corner. It's not taking up space from anything else. And I mentioned this guy kind of slowly dies out, and then it's very naked, it's very open, and then it creeps in with the swells and starts taking up space. I think that's just good dynamics. I think that those are particularly well done dynamics. So then we get into the whale sound here. This is from Granular Whale Song, which is a package from Spitfire Labs. This is super cool, something that I like a lot. It's especially good for like weird ambient stuff. As you can see from the names, it's pretty out there, but you can do some very cool stuff with it. And here actually I have it. There's a decent bit of reverb and then a lot of sustain. I prefer big sustain here because I want the notes themselves to carry out, whereas reverb kind of is like the cloudy effect of the reverb around the notes is what would carry on. But I want the notes. I think that I like the space that they take up. I think sustain's a good choice there. And then here's a big key. We've got the big attack. We've got 15-second attack. So 15 seconds for the sound to get really full. Let's see. Yeah, you can feel that. Like, it makes it so that it swells in. See, it's not so harsh. It's not so abrupt. And, I don't know, that's nice. Whereas if you were to, like, lower the attack, and at this point I'm just having fun with synths because they're fun, but see, like... See, that's instant. There's no creep there. And that has its own place in another mix, but not here. You don't get it, especially with so much sustain. It's nice for it to just roll in there. And especially since this is only 3 notes, it's 3 spread out notes, which you can see if we look at the MIDI, covering like 2 octaves. We're just really getting a bunch of space out of these notes. So the really low attack's nice there. And we'll keep it soloed out for a second. So looking at how it goes, it just creeps in slow. It creeps in slow so that you don't even immediately notice that it's there. Just all of a sudden you realize, oh, this mix has gotten so much bigger, so much spacier. And I don't know, that's interesting. I think that it's necessary to have that in a mix. Kind of like I was saying earlier, it's felt more than heard. Because now at this point you're just, we're just, the mix is huge. The mix went from stripped down and sparse to huge. And you don't notice that it's happening until it's already happened, which is nice. So altogether you get this swell part where things start to build, and it's that sense of dread that I've mentioned. I think so. Maybe that's a little subjective. It's just sweeping in. You don't notice it's happening. Now, back to the point I was making, we don't need a counter melody, and we don't need to have really long notes. We can get away with the fun parts of staccato without having an empty mix, because all these frequencies are very satisfied. There's no like empty holes so much. It's really nice. These things kind of roll out here. Again, I have really long sustain there, so even though the MIDI notes are ending, it's going to carry on. And that's a lovely way to end the mix, right? To just slowly let it die out. It's nice. So yeah, that's really like the core parts of the mix there. We went through all the instruments. Something to look at. Hey. I guess a couple things. I'm a bad person, and I'm applying effects directly onto the master instead of through a bus. I think that the pros don't do that, but it's very convenient this way, and it doesn't seem to be hurting me. I have a couple things on the master as well. I generally don't EQ the master, but I kind of understated how difficult it was to tame the bassy digits. I think I mentioned I have a ton of compression on it because like without this compression, As that envelope comes in, the trebly parts are way more present than the lower parts, and it doesn't sound so good. Whereas this, it's more of a uniform, consistent sound, and that's what I was looking for, because that's really just filling a role there. But yeah, then on the master, so that's really just for that purpose. The mix was too bassy in general with a couple of the other instruments. Got the supercharger, mostly, like I said, that's for the digits, but you want compression on your overall mix. I think it's easy to not notice how different the sounds are, like volume wise, and you got to be careful. You want to keep your dynamics, but you also don't want, like, you know, it's like if you're watching a movie, if someone's yelling in one scene and then someone's whispering in the next, you can catch the dynamics. You know, you can tell that one's a yell and one's a whisper, but you can hear them the same. The yell doesn't hurt your ears, and you don't have to strain to hear the whisper. It's like that. You want compression so that you can hear everything, but you want to maintain the dynamics. So that's why I have this, but this is maybe a little more than I would generally use. A nice thing about a compressor on the master is you can also crank the output to get it louder. That's a little less necessary with digital workstations because, like, you have so much clean headroom here, but it's nice nonetheless. Yeah, I also have a limiter, just kind of, again, trying to tame that digits for the most part, but just add some volume reduction if things are getting too crazy, just to have a nice clean mix so that you don't want the listener playing around with volume. Like while they're listening to the song, you don't want them turning up the intro and then turning down the denser parts. That's definitely not what you're looking for. And these more mastering tools will cover that. One other thing I use for mastering, a lot of times I export the whole track as an MP3 file, then I'll put it in a new project, and yeah, once it's in the new project, I can like look at the waveform and make some decisions based around that. But I like this Klanghelm suite. They have a lot of great free mastering VSTs, and here I like this IVGI2. It's just good for mastering. You can add some drive, you can trim. If you have stereo stuff, this crosstalk becomes useful. Can like increase or reduce the output. This asymmetrical mix kind of lets you see how much you want the tool to color the mix. I guess if I'm already rambling, I'll talk about transparency a little. Transparency, like a transparent tool in music, is something that applies its function without coloring the tone, whereas something that's not transparent, it's going to add some sort of identity to the tone, and that can be good and that can be bad. Sometimes, if say it's a compressor, sometimes you just want compression and you like your original tone, so you would want a transparent compressor, whereas sometimes you're using a compressor because you want compression, but also you like the way that it saturates the frequencies. You like the way it colors your tones, so you'll use a less transparent one. This allows you to choose between that. You can go super transparent, really not transparent, a lot of color. I like the color provided by this, so I like to use that a lot. And even like when I master the full album, when I do Seize It With Thine Own Hands, I run all of the tracks through the same IVGI2, and I have it as a not super impactful, but the impacts it has are they're very coloring. I have a very like I have this knob way to the left on the mix. I think that provides some consistency between the songs. It's like in person studios with analog, that's done really often. It's part of why analog equipment, why studios can be so expensive, why the equipment for it can be so expensive, because you're buying all of these very expensive, delicate things to just run the songs through, to saturate them, and to add that color to everything uniformly. Like I said, giving an album like an identity. Yeah, but I don't have that on this mix. I usually do the mastering stuff in another window. But I added this just to kind of show you guys what's going on. So yeah, I think that we're, I don't know, I think we're really cooking. I think kind of covered everything from start to finish. It's a super fun song that I'm excited to have recently released. And I'm a big music dude. I'm a big production dude. I have some experience doing live sound and things like that. I don't know. It's nice to just really get into the nitty gritty and talk about it. Not sure how interested people are in this type of content, but I'm interested in making it. When I was first getting into the genre, I found myself searching for stuff like this, and I found some of it, but not everything that I needed. Yeah, hopefully someone out there can learn a little bit from this. All right. Listen to the song. I worked really hard on it and I like it. Listen to all my other songs because I like those. And yeah, that's all we got. Get out of here. Take care.